Welcome to the Nonprofits, and I hope everyone's sitting down for this one, because this one is going to be the shock of your life. A pastor misbehaving. What in the world could that be about? Stephen, why don't you fill us in on that?
Thank you, Infidel. In a shocking twist of events, a pastor was arrested for allegedly taking nude photos of a female congregant without her consent. I'll give you a moment to clutch your pearls. Gabe, thank you. Gabe Mills was the guest experience pastor at Journey Megachurch in Kenosha, Wisconsin, but that changed when on September 22nd, during a life group meeting he was hosting, Gabe is reported to have used a congregant's phone, found explicit photos of the congregant's wife, and then airdropped those photos to his own phone for later perusal. When the transfer was discovered, police were involved. Gabe was arrested and bail was posted at $7,500, which was paid. If convicted, he could face over 10 years in jail. Now, since this story first broke, a second victim has come forward, and police have corroborated that allegation with evidence found on Gabe's phone, and he was subsequently re-arrested. Journey Church's website and social media pages have not addressed this issue publicly. This story is originally from yahoo.com by Indiana Schiltz on October 2nd, 2024.
Thanks, Stephen, and I'm glad I was sitting down for that one. But, you know, I also, it reminded me that my brother-in-law gets up every Sunday morning and Wednesday and gets his family together and goes to a church where the pastor is facing not one, but two charges with two different minors of sexual assault, repeated sexual assault. So at least I got to say, it sounds like this pastor may have lost his job, which is at least a step above that. But it does bring me to a question. I hear all this, this happy and healthy Christian man. What are your thoughts on this happy, healthy Christian man facade? And how do you think it relates to real behavior?
Like, I don't know the background of y'all, but for myself, this is where I lived for like my teens and my 20s. I came out to, like, I realized when I was 16 years old that I might have a problem with gay lust. And it became clear to me that, the only way out of this is through God, is through Jesus. And so, like, I've been just painted this picture of all these other happy, healthy Christian men in the church. And that if I'm able to, like, access God, God can do that in me too. And that's what I should be aiming for. And it is just so, I feel so many things over this story. I understand that a guy like Gabe here, he would have been trying really hard to be that picture that he's told that he should be, right? And he worked really hard at it, but eventually that veneer peeled up and it exposed this rotting chipboard of patriarchy that is behind this happy, healthy male veneer. And it's devastating to the victims who have to endure the outcome of this facade stripping away. And it's gut wrenching to know that so many men buy into this. And not to say that every single man is holding up this facade and that they are all, deeply struggling beneath that facade. Maybe there are some men that are within the church who do feel confident and healthy in their sexuality, and they point to the church and say, "Oh yeah, I'm this way because of Jesus, because of the Bible, because of my devotion." And for everyone else, they believe that story. They believe what they're being told, and that it can work for them too. Whatever they've got going on for them, it is not tied to a supernatural reason. But that's the story that we all need to uphold. And when that story crumbles apart, often it's women who are impacted the most by it, or minors in the case of your brother-in-law.
Something you just said, Stephen, made me think of conversion conversion therapy. And when you think of conversion therapy, you think on, like a radical, facility that tries to convert teenagers into from gay to straight. But the truth is that conversion therapy is all over Christianity. It's all over. Like, it's not just in these facilities. Like, you have to be this way because, that's the only way to be this happy, healthy man or whatever it is. And you have to repress your true self, your gayness, your everything, your sexual lust, everything that is immoral.
Yeah, AJ, I couldn't help but once again think about my brother-in-law, and that sounds kind of unfortunate. But when I grew up in New Orleans, and we were teenagers. We would go out and do all the things that teenagers aren't supposed to do, but that's what we did. And now he is so homophobic that he won't even drink a drink out of a straw. And one day I called him out on it because he tells this story about he saw this guy who was, in his view, effeminate, who was drunk out of a straw, and it just so blew his mind that he couldn't drink out of a straw again. And he also still doesn't understand why my pansexual oldest daughter has a kid and married to a woman. That's just too complicated for him to figure out. And I don't understand it because when we were teenagers, he would go to gay bars with me. So I don't know what happened between that time. Maybe God just told him, he needs to conform, like you said, that conversion therapy. And so that's what made me think about it. But AJ, what do you think about Mill's response when he was confronted? Did he just step up and say, "Yeah, I did it," or did he try to play the squeamish? No, it must be something else. It's not turned on. It's all in your head. But what did he do?
His response was exactly what we expect from a pastor, doing things that, are against biblical teachings. Deny. But not only did Pastor Mills violate this victim's privacy, he did it from his husband's phone. And to make matters worse, Pastor Mills himself is married. And after the victim saw the photos on the screen of his phone and, she called him out on it, he claimed that the photos were of his own wife. He went as far as to send the victim's husband a photo of his wife to convince him that that's what the victim saw on his screen, right? And she was like, "That's not it." Talk about trying to weasel his way out. This shows not just his way of excusing what the Bible and the church will consider sexual immorality, but also violating the sanctity of marriage that they just love to preach constantly.
It's interesting how they'll set up consistently. We see these people, and sometimes the worse they are at being bigoted, the worse they are at being just anti any hell they won't even use the letter L because LGBTQ starts out with an L practically. And time and again we find out that these people are doing the same things that they get up and pound the pulpit about every Sunday. And this is just another example of that hypocrisy that you're talking about. Now, Aaron, what is your opinion on churches in response to the misconduct? Do you think that thoughts and prayer is enough? Can we just all go home and close this segment out? Because I'm sure the people at Journey Church prayed about this.
Well, the church did put out a statement, and they made it clear that this pastor no longer works for them, that he was fired, and rightly so, because he was caught red-handed at the meeting where he was looking at where he stole the pictures. He also proceeded to look at the pictures while in the meeting. Like, he couldn't even wait till they got home to enjoy them in private. He actually was sneaking around with people around, looking at the picture. It's like, what? So anyway, at least the church fired him, because a lot of churches don't, right? They stand behind their pastors even when it's obvious that the allegations are true. So I have to give the church that. However, the thoughts and prayers and the church made statements that they had to come together as a community. They had to trust in Jesus, right? They had to trust in Jesus's love. And I'm just like, Jesus' love really hasn't done much for anybody, to be honest. Thoughts and prayers are about as useful as doing nothing. And what these people need is they need a church that makes sure that pastors like this don't get positions of leadership, that someone can't just say, "Oh, I want to be a pastor," and suddenly they're a pastor, that there's some kind of background checking. I don't know if that would have helped in this situation. And then some kind of help for victims. So when victims fall prey to something like this, that they have support, and not just to church counselors, but to actual licensed, trained therapists, encouraging people to get a counseling and get help. And maybe also let's tone down the rhetoric on this idea of sexual purity. Maybe we can do that, because when you repress people's sexuality, that energy comes out in some other way. And I kind of feel a little bit sorry for this guy, that he's got it so bad. He's so sexually repressed that he stole these pictures. And like I mentioned, he couldn't even wait 2 hours to enjoy them. He had to be enjoying them in front of everybody. Maybe it was a cry for help. I don't know. But I've heard so many stories from people that once they accepted that they were sexual beings, once they accepted their sexuality, that they had a sexuality, that they were sexual, that all these weird sexual problems from repressing it kind of go away, right? They kind of start seeing women as people instead of objects. They kind of, have more self-respect and self-esteem and are able to love themselves more, and they are able to interact with people in a more healthy manner. So I really would wish churches would stop obsessing so much about sexual purity and sex before marriage and masturbation and all this stuff, because it doesn't matter at all.
The more forbidden it is, the more people crave it and want it and act upon it in a way that is completely inappropriate.
Exactly. Instead of teaching people how to be sexually healthy, they just teach people to repress their sexuality, and then they don't know how to express it. And then they start stealing people's pictures.
Yeah, exactly.
At best.
We hear time and time again of different situations where people want to, it's like Florida recently essentially just gutted everything other than abstinence only in their sexual education programs, to the point where they cannot say the word fluids because, and when it comes to, and don't even want to discuss things like consent or things like domestic abuse. And you have to wonder what the goal is on these type of things, because I don't know why you would want to deny this, because I know the Bible says that, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And Jesus promotes this whole idea of thought crime of, if you see it and you think it, you might as well have done it. And we set people up for failure. And that's really what I feel like this whole purity thing that you were talking about, Aaron, does. It sets you up for failure, because we're sexual beings for the most part. And I know there are asexual people out there, not knocking you. You do your thing. I'm proud and happy for you, and I'm supporting you in that. But most of us aren't. That's a reality. And when you start telling people to repress those natural desires that are within them, you get bad results. That shouldn't be a surprise. If you cage an animal and treat them like shit, when they get out of the cage, they're not going to act like a disciplined animal. They're going to act like a uncontrollable rage, because you haven't given them the tools to understand sexuality is normal. It's something we all experience, or most of us experience, and we should embrace that. Now,
even the lack of sexuality is an experience of sexuality.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And once again, you don't learn, because you can't learn that you're asexual if you repress yourself. You've got to be able to explore who you are first, so you can know what you are, who you are, how you feel about these topics. But talking about repression and all of these topics, going over to you, Stephen. I guess I should have worded that better. What do you think? I hear the term locker room talk a lot. What do you think this reveals about societal expectations of men and what that puts on people by giving that excuse, that phrase, which I don't like.
And even rewinding a little bit, just because I came out to myself 2 weeks before COVID hit its worst. Once the world regained most of its sanity again, my quality of life was so much greater, because I didn't have to juggle at all of these expectations that I should be this, I should be this, I need to be this, I need to be that. And I could just focus on who am I and who am I actually? And it just was such a drastic change in my life. Just my ability to make decisions got so much more thoughtful, and I could actually I felt like I was in control. I know, and this is where when I go back into that space mentally where I was at during my teens and my 20s and somewhat in my 30s as well, just that duplicity of knowing that, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what I don't want to do, and then something comes along and just suddenly a flip is switched and suddenly I'm no longer in my right brain and I'm making these shitty decisions like this Gabe guy made. And like, I get it. And then once the decision is made and you've had your fun, like, oh shit, I just feel like, I lost control. And so I really empathize with the guys who are wanting to be making those right decisions, but feel like they don't have the ability because something just fires wrong in their brain. And I think that like when we hear about locker room talk, I think it's a part of that pressure to be like, okay, I need to be this kind of person. I need to be this kind of man, outward facing. And there's no release for me to actually express who I am. And that's why we see this locker room talk. I can only speculate about what locker room talk is actually about because I was too gay to be welcome in a locker room type setting. Sorry, too closeted gay to be welcome in a locker room setting. But just that idea that these men who are trying to do what's best and trying to be what the church tells them to be, trying to be what society in some ways is trying to tell them who they should be, and holding up this facade, trying to pretend, fake it till they make it long enough till they can, so that they can just like fool enough people. And if they're really good, then maybe they'll get this pastoral position. But it just takes one wrong decision. You just let your guard down one time, you make the one shitty decision, and it all blows up in your face, and people get hurt by it. And it's a part of a system that just needs to be addressed. We need to see change because our young men, our teens, they are not being given, historically at least, the kind of model that they can actually follow for healthy, happy masculinity. I know, and whatever, I don't want to project. I know I didn't, and maybe everybody else in the world did, but I sure as hell didn't. And I wish that I had, and I'm just glad that I'm able to find it now, 25 years later.
I probably say this way too much, but I didn't embrace this until very recently. But being your own authentic self is like the most freeing, amazing experience you can have, and it helps you grow. It helps you be a better person, like you said. It helps you be happier, make better decisions. It's just so important that we teach, like you say, teenagers, not just boys but girls too, that being their authentic selves is just the ultimate goal. It should be the ultimate goal. And if people are not happy that you are happy, then maybe they're not the right people to be around you.
AJ, I think that you hit it perfectly there. You tied in what I was about to say with Stephen, and that is that a lot of this boils down into the unrealistic expectations that religion placed on, well, all of us seem to have a religious history, and it places an unrealistic expectation, even if you're not in one of the groups that the religious organizations are shaming this week. You still can't live up to the expectations of what the Bible says. Because number one, it's not consistent. So if you start off that it's not giving you a consistent rule book, and the rule book is just absolutely batshit crazy, what you're going to do is look at yourself and go, it's me. I'm the one that's wrong. I'm broken. Whatever happens is definitely my fault. So when it happens, because you are human and you're going to not live up to even your own expectation, you're going to let yourself down sometimes. And that's when you have the most realistic expectations in the world. So when you have these expectations that nobody can live up to, what you're doing is only teaching people you're a piece of shit. You're a piece of shit, and your goal is to cover that up absolutely the best you can. Because really, that's what it is, all running around trying to pretend or be something. And it's not, when I say pretend, I don't mean in an insincere way, but definitely in an inauthentic way, because as AJ just brought up, being who you are is pretty goddamn important. Now, AJ, I did want to reach out to you again. How do you feel about the balance between personal rights, body autonomy, and digital privacy in this kind of situation in today's world in relating to this?
Yeah, I understand that once we put something in a digital format, we live in the age of the internet. So whether it is on the internet or on private phones, all bets are off, right? But it may end up in some dark corner of the web, at the hands of other people. But this should not mean that we need to give up any kind of body autonomy or right to privacy. Women and men too should be able to take whatever kind of photos, sexy photos or whatever of themselves that they want to share with somebody that they trust, and not have that photo end up anywhere else due to someone violating that privacy. And this pastor clearly violated both the victim's husband's privacy and the victim's privacy, both of these people. And so yeah, I mean, it's a weird age that we live in with information that is digital, but it shouldn't take away from the fact that we should be able to share stuff like that with the people that we want to.
And he also violated his wife's privacy too by sharing photos of his wife with the other guy.
Now, Aaron, why do you think that there's this tendency? Because in this particular case, we did see the church do, I hate to say the right thing, but they definitely did what they could at that point, and that's at least cut him loose because, and understand that he has problems of his own to deal with, but that's not an excuse to remain in leadership, and at least he did that. Why do you think that some people use religion as a shield when they get caught doing something wrong? This situation, or we see it time and again.
I'm not necessarily sure it's religion per se. I think it's just the human tendency to want to not want to take responsibility. Maybe religion contributes to it in that religion promotes this idea of, I know I was raised Mormon, and in Mormon, the constant refrain is what Jesus said, be therefore perfect. And so that you're always striving to be perfect, right? And so you're never authentic because your authentic self isn't perfect. So you're always striving to be perfect. And so when you make a mistake and you're confronted with it, your initial reaction as a human is like, oh no, I didn't, no, I'm perfect, I'm trying, right? It's not to take responsibility. And people, for some reason in Christian churches, and you get judged for not being perfect, right? Nobody around you is perfect. Everybody's making mistakes, but everybody gets judged for those mistakes that they're making. Instead of just being accepted for who they are, that we make mistakes, that you'll feel that judgment from your Christian friends or from other people in religion. And so of course this guy's gonna be like, oh no, I didn't do it, because there's going to be that judgment that he receives. And when you're part of a church, that's your community, that's your tribe. And to do something that's against what your tribe wants you to do, you get kicked out of the tribe. And so then you're emotionally, you're threatened with death, an emotional death, so to speak. And so yeah, I don't blame this guy, anybody really, for trying to use religion as a shield, because it's really kind of an emotional or social death that you can be party to. And then a lot of times these religions and churches and any type of organization, they're set up to protect people that are in power from the consequences of their actions. And I do applaud this church for at least firing this guy and making sure he's not around people anymore.
Especially as the guest experience pastor. Like, he's the guy in charge of like the greeters at the front, and like if you are coming in for the first time, he is in charge of your experience. And just like, oh.
Yeah. Well, not trying to make light of it, but he definitely provided an experience. So
unfortunately.
Yes, and the reality is that we look at this and we had to be reminded that this is something that doesn't just impact the pastor who's going to be facing charges, or the woman whose privacy was abused, for lack of a better way to put it. This impacts a community that in that church. And while I don't agree with them more accurately on their beliefs and many of the things that they would hold dear, it causes them harm too, once again, because we're setting unrealistic expectations on people. Now, before I wrap this up, I wanted to know, AJ, anything else you wanted to touch on before we get to that?
I think that in this case, there's a lot of issues that we need to focus on. Not just about making sure that these people that are doing things that they shouldn't be doing be punished. In this case, I think it was great that they fired him. He got charged not just on the first case, but now there seems to be another victim that came up, and she is also helping make sure that he is charged a second time. So yeah, I would say that's pretty fair, and that's what we need to focus on. Like, make sure that they are being that that they're taking accountability for their actions.
I definitely hope that the people who have been victimized by this reach out to some kind of counseling, because this isn't just some kind of victimless crime where somebody saw a picture and it's no big deal and their life goes on. And I think that unfortunately, oftentimes in religious communities, that's really what they're looking for is let's shut this down. Let's move on absolutely as quick as we can. And let's pretend it never happened. But speaking of pretending it never happened, if you want to see things that did happen, we have links for you to watch more nonprofits. So just click down below.